Welcome to More Than a Conversation, the podcast where we meet and have discussions with some of the most interesting people and innovative leaders in their fields from all walks of life. We will be discussing everything from politics to theology to religion to philosophy to life. Every once in a while, I may just be on here talking about whatever's in the news and whatever I think will be of interest to you. This is your host, Patrick Connolly, and I hope that today will be more than a conversation for you. This is your host, Patrick Connolly, and today I am joined by someone that I personally believe all of you need to go listen to. I am joined today by God's Comic. Now that's a high calling, God's Comic. And so we're joined today by Brad Stine. Brad is someone who I believe to be, he's not just a Christian comedian talent. He is a standout comic in every way that you would analyze the word comic for those of you that are comedy fans. But he also is a truth teller, and he's a truth teller in a way that comedy helps to get the point across. But I love the fact that he does speak truth, going all the way back to that God's Comic album. In fact, maybe Wear a Helmet. Was that something? Was that you doing that back in the day? I mean, there was some stuff that.
Put a Helmet On was the one that people most know me for. Was Put a Helmet On. That was shot in 2003 at Thomas Road Baptist Church in front of the late Jerry Falwell Sr. and his wife. That's how old school that is. Almost 25 years ago. At which point, it did allow more of the evangelical community worldwide to know who I was, what I stood for, and basically let them know that I was not going to embrace or in any way condone political correctness, cultural Marxism, or loss of free speech by the West. And so it kind of destroyed my career in the mainstream and launched a ministry for me to tell God's story through the unorthodox means of comedy. So here I sit this many years later, finally reaching the zenith of my career by being on here with you.
Hey, the fact that you're on More Than a Conversation tells you that you finally made it. And I'm just glad that you have clawed your way to the top. And so it's lonely up here.
Yeah, I hope I die. I hope I die soon, because nothing is going to be better than this. So everything's going to go downhill. So, maybe the Lord will take me home as soon as we're finished talking.
Absolutely. In fact, we can't even have you back because it's the law of, diminishing return, like that third piece of cheesecake. Right. You just can't do it. So, but here you are. And so, but if you can possibly gather your thoughts, just get over the moment, take a deep breath and get it all together.
I've already soiled myself, so I'm going to have to change pants. But after that, we can keep going.
There you go. That's the ultimate power move. But so quickly, Brad, we always, whenever we have a new guest on, like to do kind of the origin story. So just tell us a little bit about you, just the early days, born a pauper to a pawn. Tell us about it.
Well, I was started out as a small child and grew not much. I stopped at about 5'6", and that's where God said, "That's plenty. We don't need any more of this Stine. I can barely handle that." Born in Indiana, a tiny little town called Bremen, Indiana. Many years ago, my parents moved to California when I was 9. So I grew up most of my life in Southern California. I was saved in a little Presbyterian church in Orange, California, right by the Orange Circle at 9, and became a Christian at that point. And of course, spent the rest of my life on the journey of trying to refine that, and the peaks and valleys and darkness and goodness that comes from that long journey of yes and legalism and right, black and white and prodigal journey and everything that goes along with trying to understand what it means to be a true believer. And so I ended up always interested in the arts. My dad was in community theater as an actor, and also had a little band. So I kind of grew up around watching people in my family in the business a little bit. I had a cousin that was on as an actor in television, whatnot, in the 60s and whatnot. So, you know, it wasn't completely foreign to think that, you know, the arts might be something that I might end up in. I have family that are still in the carnival, so I even was part of that world and saw a lot of very, you know, odd and unusual fabric of my DNA that interested me in the performance arts. I was a magician, close-up magician. If you have Baptist listeners, what I mean by that is it's simply tricks. It is sleight of hand. It does nothing to do with demons, nor does it in any way use necromancy. It is simply jugglery and give the illusion of the supernatural, but it's all pretend, so you guys can back off. Anyways, I did that. So I did professional sleight of hand in Southern California and performed and did that as a living. But when I did it, I always did it in a kind of funny way. I just had a natural proclivity to be humorous. It was just kind of normal, natural. And so from that point on, I realized, well, gee, if I want to make more money, I need to find a better way to make money than this little close-up magic because it doesn't pay as well. So I thought, well, hey, I could go into comedy clubs and kind of be a comedy magician because they're all over the place and it'll just be another income source for me. So that's kind of where I thought I would go. And then when I ended up kind of in the clubs, I found the comedy to be more interesting to me, intriguing to me, artistically, because it was so organic. You know, with sleight of hand, magic, jugglery, music, all talents that are difficult and so forth, but it's something you can learn because it's a manipulation of your you know, muscles and so forth and so on. So that doesn't mean some aren't brilliant at it and can do better than the rest, but nevertheless, you can teach somebody to play piano, you can teach somebody to do a magic trick, you can teach somebody to juggle, right? But you can't teach somebody to be funny. You either can or you can't. And some people want to be funny and they're not supposed to be. And that's not an insult. I mean, it's kind of like if I want to be a nuclear physicist, well, I'm no good at math. So why would I try to do some that I'm interested in, but I don't have the proclivity? So to me, the comedy was just intriguing because it's like, man, talk about raw. It's a mind, a mouth, and a mic. That's all you get. You got nowhere to hide. You got no. If you're in a band, you can lay back one day when you're kind of tired, and let the band help you, assist you. You got nothing. It's just you by yourself in front of a bunch of people who don't know you, and you have to try to bring about a scenario that they like and enjoy and laugh with you. So very, very challenging, which to me was exciting and fun. Is the number one fear, I guess, from what I understand of humans, is speaking in front of an audience. That's weird to me, but because I always loved it. So again, it was a gift. It was just some God gave me this thing that I enjoyed talking to people and had no problem with it. So that all then evolved over the time. Again, it's a much longer story, and I don't know that that's as interesting, but I'm trying to give you a background into working in churches. And because I was clean, and they started booking me in churches, and I didn't know that was a thing. I grew up in the church, never saw a stand-up comic in my life in a church. So it's like, what is this? And so when it started opening up that door for me, again, thinking it was only a means for an income source, I found myself more interested in saying some inspirational, spiritual elements interfaced with the comedy. Just kind of was a natural rhetoric that I found myself compelled to say. And so after all, again, much longer story, so I don't know that that's what we're here to talk about, but I was being called to ministry. I was being called to be a prophetic voice to the church in America in this season, meaning that I am to say hard truths in the hopes of inspiring and drawing believers to move into discipleship, which is the only thing we were ever supposed to do in the first place. As I've said a million times, we were never called to be Christians. We were called to be disciples. Why? Because Christian is easy. Jesus does all the hard labor. He lives the sinless life because I can't. He takes the sin of the earth upon himself unjustly because I did deserve it. And he resurrected and had power over death because I didn't. And then he offered that to me as a sacrifice so that I could spend eternity in the Holy of Holies with living God for something I have no reason to have access to. So he did all the work. So the freedom and the free pass that God gives us is free, and it is easy because he does all the work. But before you take that card out of his hand, that get out of jail free card, he does ask one thing. Are you counting the cost? Because from the moment you said yes to Jesus, you died. When I resurrect you, your life is mine, and you will do, say, and behave exactly as I demand, because I have an assignment for you until I take you home. That has not been taught in churches in the United States of America. We have never thought there was anything at stake in the United States of America, and we feel put out if we are inconvenienced as Christians in the United States of America. And for that reason, God has allowed the church to collapse in many ways in this country, and it should have, because it didn't make disciples. You wanted things safe, and Christianity is dangerous. Well, that's changing now. Not only with just the corona really began to expose the warriors and those who were not, those who allowed the federal government to tell them if they're essential or not, and those who said, no, I serve God. And now, as we tape this, whatever this is, September 18th, I think, of 2025, I watermarked that in case this is watched years from now. Last week, Charlie Kirk was assassinated as a martyr for his faith and for his point of view. And that is the watershed moment when I have said for years, it's our turn. And so that's what my comedy has come. I did not see that coming. I did not ask for it. I did not want it. But I did want God. And I did want to do what he'd asked of me. And this is where I'm at. So my comedy is simply a delivery system to say some harder things to believers, to get them into a higher rank of discipleship so that they can defend the faith and show people what it looks like to be redeemed, and that there is hope and there is something beautiful on the other side. But get busy. So long answer to a simple question, but it's your fault. You ask.
There's a lot that goes into the responsibility of art to make a statement, where good art does have a message, whatever that message might be. Art done well, and maybe good art's the wrong way, because there can be art that's done well that's not good. But art done well always is delivering a message. And so to see you do that, I am curious, and I want to go back and get into some of the other things. And obviously we want to talk about the events of last week. This is actually the first podcast I've recorded since those events. And my therapist was booked up, so you're going to help me process everything today, Brad. You didn't know that. But so interestingly, you talk about being in the arts. What was that like? I mean, you seem to be pretty far to the right to be a guy in what we would think of as stereotypically the arts. So how was that? Did you have a lot of conflict in the arts world, being as conservative as you are?
Oh, well, of course. The arts have been hijacked by leftism, progressivism, and has for a long time. See, what happens is that there was a reason for art. It's a purpose, and it's to draw us to the transcendent. The purpose of art initially was to say that there's something grander than ourselves that we are to worship. There's something that is superior to us, that rules over us, has given us the architecture of what it means to be a human and how to behave in that regard. And so we would make architecture and leads in edifices and poetry and music and so forth to honor God, to say to him, thank you for having us here. Thank you for what you've given to us, right? Let us sort of represent you the best we can in thanks for your higher existence, your higher ontological existence than what we are. You created us. So, art, I think, is, and when it's done in a beautiful, God-breathed way, is timeless. That's what the Sistine Chapel is. That's what the Pieta is. That's what the churches of the Renaissance and the Middle Ages that are still standing are. They're marvels that make us in awe. See, the church, again, in America, trivializes even words. It became such a thing in the youth group nomenclature. That's awesome. Oh, look, we're having a pizza party. That's awesome. It's like awesome is a word that should be saved for all. And so you should walk in and go, that's what awesome is. It's not pizza. So when you start belittling the power of words and art and make it about yourself, then you humanize it, you corrupt it, and you make it less valuable, because it's to point you to something greater than yourselves, to get outside of yourself. And so, I saw a lot of artists as I was a comic that were left leaning. They were hating America, and they always use the swear words and the graphic words and sexual jokes and so forth and so on. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not like that. I grew, I was born in a little town in Indiana. My grandparents were farmers. I'm blue collar. I love God. I love my country. I don't worship it. I don't worship the United States of America. And the older I get and the more I see the world as it is, the less I am connected to the United States as sort of a sacred place. I think it's more of a place that God has given us to redeem. It's a place He's given us to be of influence. Pilgrims that landed on this nation said, we give this to Christ. So it did have this sort of sacred alleged beginning, right? So there's value to it. It's the greatest nation there ever was when it comes to freedom, that's for sure. But our answer is Jesus, not Trump. Our answer is Jesus, not, the United States. But if it gives us freedom to free speech and so forth, then it should be honored, because what a gift, and what an incredibly rare gift that is. So as a comic, I just got frustrated because I thought to myself, I'm on the same stages that this guy is and this guy is. People are laughing at me too. So I guess I'm good at this too. I guess I'm funny too. Not everybody likes what I have to say, and that's fine. By the way, this is very important if you're an artist listening. You don't want everybody to like you, because if they do, you're not saying anything worth listening to. Because if you stand for something, it means somebody will despise it. Somebody will hate it. Somebody will disregard it. And that's good, because it means you're standing for something. And it means your personality, your unique thumbprint that God has given you is what you're putting out in the atmosphere. Well, not everybody's going to like it. If everybody likes you, you're vanilla. There's nothing that you're not provoking anything that might be of value in the long term. So, yeah, I know there's comics that are safe and funny and not trying to be political or whatever you want to call it. And that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You want to go and just laugh and just be disregard what's happening on the earth. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think that art can be maybe more productive if it has something more important to say. And I remember somebody said to me years ago, they said, "Are you a comic or are you a preacher?" And I said to them, this is when obviously God was molding me into what He was going to use me for. And I said to them this, I said, I'm curious about the question. I said, how come when I do comedy and bring up things I believe in, I'm a preacher, but if Chris Rock does it, he's a social commentator? Everybody. I said, everybody preaches. If you say anything about what you believe, you're preaching. So what are you talking about? Why are you trying to isolate me as though you on the left aren't preaching? You are. You have a very specific ideology, and it hates my people. It hates my people. So that's what I'm standing for. Again, it's a beyond my comprehension what God had planned for me as a comic, because I thought that's all I was. I mean, I'm just a comedian, man. I'm funny. I enjoy this. I'm glad I can add God's elements to it, but I'm not in ministry. And sure enough, He said, you are what I tell you you are. And that's what you need to understand. This false humility that Christians sometimes will, well, I'm not a preacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a whatever the thing might be. You'll say, well, wait a minute. What did God call you to be? Because whatever that is, that's exactly who you are.
Well, and you call it false humility, and it is false humility, because it's an extreme act of pride to tell the Creator that you know better what you are than He does.
Of course. And
That's a pretty arrogant
he
thing.
makes you into he makes you into a vessel to carry some holy water. And you say, "Oh, I'm not worthy of that. Just let me just be drinking water for the peasants." And God said, "I'm sorry. What did you say? Because I told you this is what I need from you." So I don't know where you get off thinking that somehow you were some humble servant, but that it's blasphemy, I think, to go to God Almighty who says, "I am calling you to this," and you say, "Oh no, I don't deserve it." Ah, saith God. I don't know what I'm doing then. When I proclaim something as holy and sacred and specific, you get to decide for me if that's accurate or not. Depart from me, Satan. Get behind me. I'm telling you, the thing that has driven me in the last couple of years that is just overwhelming to me. Becoming a believer is easy because the work is done for you. But you're not called to that. You're called to be a disciple, which is where we get the word discipline. And that's the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. If your Christianity is easy, I promise you, you're not doing Christian. You're not doing it.
I wanted to go back to something you just said, because you talked about, comedians who are just out here just making people laugh or whatever. But it's not just comedians, Brad. It's pastors. It's people in positions to be speaking where, I'm going to be, and you use the word safe. I'm going to be safe. I'm going to teach, and again, I'm not belittling anything in the scripture, but, we're going to do our 17th iteration of the Beatitudes for our summer series or whatever the thing is. We're never going to get to the difficult stuff. We're never going to contend for the faith. We're never actually going to equip the people. But, Jesus says something, and I actually just went back and looked it up again. In the King James, it talks about the idle word. Idle words and giving account. Well, what's an idle word? It's a word that's worthless. It's of no use. It adds nothing. And I think, and it's interesting that I'm talking to you about this, the idea of the power of words. And we live in a world now where we're all able just to throw words out there at any time. And we're able to say things on social media and that sort of thing. But to think that we have pastors, leaders, even so-called Christians in art who are they're putting out words, they're putting out things, but they're putting out things of no value, things of no use. And Jesus says you're going to give account for that because you've not stewarded your ability to speak, to use words.
Well, I mean, for one thing, obviously it's not my place to determine what somebody's call is or what exactly they are supposed to do or not do. So I want to be very clear to those listening or watching. I'm not here to make those judgments. I don't have any idea what your call in your life is for. What I do know is you have one. And here's what's important. What is essential is that you pursue the calling, not the results. Because if you pursue results, what's important and valuable is if God says, "I want you to go, to this tribe somewhere in, the jungle, and there's, 35 people there, and I want you to go be there for 10 years, and nobody knows you're there, and only you are helping those little guys, and nobody knows what's happening." And if that call to them, it's the most important thing you can do, and God has called you to do that, but nobody else knows about it. So does that mean it wasn't valuable? Well, no, of course not. The value is what God puts upon your calling. So if you follow that, then what your result will be, will follow you, and he'll get what he needs out of you. So that's really what I think is essential, is that when I say to you, there's nothing wrong with just sort of fun comedy, frivolous, kind of silly comedy, because it's wonderful to laugh. God gave us that gift. Remember, we're made in his image. So anything that we do that's righteous and holy and good and pure, that isn't antithetical to his calling or his standards, is part of his nature. So laughter, God laughs. Obviously, he finds humor in things, and it's a prudent thing to do because you get everybody to come. Any political party can come together. Any religion or non-religion can come together and listen to this because it's just kind of neutral. It's just the human experience in humor. And I can't sit there and say they're wrong to do that. But even then, are you using the platform God has given you to make sure they know what you believe? There's the biggest comic in the country right now, by far, is Nate Bargatze. He has blown up. He's a Christian. I've never seen one given this much power, this much, I guess, awareness to folks. So again, what's he supposed to do? Suddenly start preaching or what? Not if God didn't call him that. But if he is not making sure to tell people when he's interviewed what he believes and what drives him, then that is where I think he is doing a disservice to the Bible. I'm not saying he's not doing that. I'm just saying that would be his expectation. And if you are a mechanic and you don't let people know what you stand for, or why are you so honest, or why do you work so hard? Well, because I'm a Christ follower, and this is what's expected of me. If you withhold that, then you have withheld what God was trying to use to influence somebody and to inspire somebody. So I'm telling you, this idea of discipline is hard because it's every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day of the fact that Jesus died once so that trillions of people could come to salvation. God used one sacrifice to multiply it unbelievably. Who can come to Christ now and be saved now because of that one sacrifice? But then when he left, he said, now you go forth and be Jesus. This is what nobody takes seriously. It's not a bumper sticker. If you're a Christ follower, you're supposed to be a disciple, and that means it's your turn to be Jesus. Now, obviously, we're going to suck at it. Obviously, we're going to fail. Obviously, we can't do it to the depth and precision that Christ does because he's God. Nevertheless, we're supposed to try. We're supposed to constantly be self-evaluating, allowing God to chip away and make us the best we can be so that we can be of influence to others and that they are intrigued by who we are and what we have. You know, the other thing about this Charlie Kirk martyrdom is how many people I saw online that were like, man, I don't know what it is, but I need a Bible. I'm going to church and I've never gone to church. So again, God says this is not uncommon that blood will be spilled so that I can bring many, many to it. And it's always repulsive to us. Our instinct as humans is the sacred life has been removed, and it's unfair and unjust because it was murder. Someone has taken my life, which was not theirs. That was God's domain, and yet God allowed it. Well, this is what I'm talking about. In Christianity around the world, if you're in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, or China, or North Korea, or Pakistan, or Turkey, or Myanmar, or Egypt, or Syria, or Libya, or Algeria, or Saudi Arabia, or United Arab Emirates, or Vietnam, or Uzbekistan, or all of these places that there's a deep cost for Christianity. I mean, real existential cost. You will be killed, or can be, or at least treated with disdain. I promise you one thing, buddy. None of those people who accepted Christ got there like this. Bow your head. Close your eyes. Nobody's looking because we don't want to embarrass you. Now raise your hand, but put it down. I don't want anybody to see so you don't feel embarrassed. I promise you, none of those people got to Christ like that. Eyes were wide open, head was wide up. And they said, if this is what it costs for the Savior of the world who dimensionalized himself to become like his own creation when he could have wiped us out and created a new batch until one of us finally got it right. But instead he said, no, I committed to my bride and I will not divorce it. And this is how I will continue the lineage until I return. For them, I will even become like you and I take on the full responsibility for what you've done. That love is beyond understanding. And that is worth everything. And tell me a church in America that treats the salvation experience like that. Because if the church doesn't realize that's what's at stake now, you do not want a bunch of people coming into the altar. You want somebody who, if they stand alone amongst the group, says, I'm all in. Because they're real. They're serious. They want to be a disciple. It shouldn't be tons of people. It should be people that are serious. And it's a small gate. So, I think that we're going to see a wonderful result of this. I mean, we got to find some value in this, yeah. And we got to find something beautiful from all this. And we are. People mocked and ridiculed this man and his death. Well, they're not hurting him. I promise you, he's okay. He's in glory. But to honor him truly would be to say it's our turn to speak truth and love, knowing that people will despise it, because the enemy hates nothing worse than truth. Because truth and lies is the only battle we've ever had from human history. The only one. And so that's why I think it's really important for you to decide who you are and to live that way, with courage. I mean, people are, believe it or not, inspired by courage. Even if they disagree with you, they like to see somebody serious about something. That integrity is appealing to people, well, either way. And so at least I know what we're dealing with. So again, long response to, hey, were you ever found it difficult to be a conservative in the arts? Yeah, well, because I was anointed God with a prophetic voice. I say that not with some kind of self-aggrandizement or look at me. I say it by saying that's what happens to me. Somebody asks me a question, and then it just keeps coming out. So all I can say is it's to bear fruit. It's to help people with whatever I'm supposed to do to inspire them to go forth and do likewise. So you guys get to see in real time what it looks like when you are foolish enough to take God at his word and to do what he's asked of you to do. So my apologies, but
no, man,
I have no option. That's how I communicate.
What do you make of the fact that we're living in a world now where I guess it's happened in the past, and so I don't want to act like it hasn't, but in a very real way, we're at a place where you can literally, there are people that not only will kill you for speaking in public, but there are people who will celebrate the fact that you were killed for speaking in public.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about where we are?
Well, what it does say for sure is a very clear delineation between good and evil. The Bible talked about this idea that there'll come a time, right, where people will say evil is good and good is evil. I believe in free speech. Okay? Now, that isn't a constitutional right exclusively, even though our Constitution does give us that right. And it is the single most important one, by the way. Notice that when our First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion or forbidding the free exercise thereof, the first freedom of the free speech was religious freedom. Well, what does that mean? Did they want a theocracy? No. They wanted your conscience to be protected. So the First Amendment, which is specific to religious, people forget. If you're an atheist, you're religious. That's your religion, is atheism, which means you have to have some foundation that drives everything you do, which is yourself. It's systemic narcissism. Atheism is the original sin. I will be God. If you're Jewish and do not accept Christ as Messiah, yeah, you're going to hell. Just like the first church, because the first church was made of Jews that said, I see it. If you're Muslim, if you're whatever, polytheist or whatever, you have freedom in this country to practice your beliefs publicly without having fear of the government intervening or a citizenry, allegedly, for being able to stifle it. But you have to understand something. I'm now listening to some folks saying, hey, I thought you guys all believed in free speech and First Amendment. Now people are getting fired and this and that. I said, wait, whoa. Whenever you say you believe in free speech, the first thing you have to discover is, do you actually believe in free speech? Because everybody thinks they do. Oh, I'm a free speech. Are you? Well, sure am. Okay, well, here's how you can tell. Okay, what? The only way you know if you believe in free speech is if you allow speech you hate to be spoken. That's the only way we'll know. Because for you to believe in free speech as long as you agree with it ain't free. That's a cult.
And so, and that's an issue that I think, and I was glad that I was, because your tour that you have right now is Laugh While It's Legal, right? Is that, yeah. So this week, the Attorney General said that essentially we need to start banning hate speech. I don't know if you've seen that yet or not, but so if Pam Bondi goes out and says we need to ban hate speech, well, my immediate thought is, well, what happens when someone who disagrees with what I'm saying or what I'm preaching, when they're in authority? And now we've normalized the idea of hate speech. We've normalized the idea that a person can be, you know, jailed, fined, whatever, for saying something that I don't like. And so to me, I feel like if someone from the left had done that, we would be melting down on the right now. But I'm not seeing a lot of concern about it because, well, these people who have said something about Charlie Kirk's death, it's terrible. And now it's not free speech if your job says we don't want you working here or what. That's not a problem with free speech. But when it comes to the law and jailing people and saying what's legal, I've got a pretty big issue there when the conservatives are now saying we need to start determining what hate speech is. Have you seen any of that? And what are your thoughts?
I haven't seen that. If that is accurate, if that's what she is proposing, then I couldn't be more adamantly against it. No, you do not get to ever censor any speech. You got to understand, I have another dog in this fight. My entire career is based on access to words. That's it. It's just words, topics, ideas, thoughts, perspective, point of view. It's mine. And I want to be able to put it out there. And here's what the market of ideas will do. If they don't like what I have to say, they don't have to put me in jail. They don't have to censor me. They don't have to charge me with a crime. The market will weed me out. If nobody wants to hear what I have to say, I won't have a job. So I'm not worried about that. Now, should there be some guardrails to free speech? Yes, there should. And we already have them. You're not allowed to say, let's go kill this guy, because that is inciting actual violence. Free speech doesn't mean that you can go incite, a mob to kill people. That's not free speech. That's, that's evil, because you are harming people existentially. But what the left did was they took words and said words are violence. No, they're not. This is so important. If I believe that I'm being attacked and somebody's coming in to kill me and my family, don't I have a right, nay, an obligation to defend myself? Of course. Someone's coming in to kill my family, I can defend myself. Nobody would disagree with that. Even Christians are allowed to defend themselves, right? So if you redefine words as violence, then you can give yourself permission to shoot people because you're killing me. That's why it's so wrong. And it's such a devious, toxic manipulation of reality. Words aren't violent. They might speak in terms that are aggressive. They might speak in terms that you aren't interested in or don't like. But outside of you saying, let's go kill people, I don't care what you say. Matter of fact, I would prefer to know if you're a Nazi. I'd rather you be able to say, hey, I'm a Nazi. Let's return that. Why? Because then I know what I'm dealing with. I don't have to figure it out. The problem has never been the demons. It's what I said with the political system. See, I know what the Democratic Party has become. It's been hijacked by the progressives. I know what they believe. If I want to kill a baby, I can kill a baby even if it's outside the womb. If I want to mutilate children's genitals to affirm them, I want that right. I don't want there to be the nuclear family. I want the government to give things to people. I don't want anybody to ever have to earn anything. I just want them to vote for me. So it's a demonic belief system. Okay. But at least they say it out loud. Here's what we believe. Here's what we're going to fight.
Sure.
Okay, good. Okay, now I know what you believe. Thank you for having the courage to at least be authentic enough to say, here's how I'm going to live my life. Here's what I'm going to fight for. Now I know what my enemy is. I know what uniform they wear. I know how to defeat that. Okay?
Hey, More Than a Conversation listeners, I hope that you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am, and I hope that you're getting something great out of it today. I'm just wanting to jump in here in the middle to take a moment and let you know a few ways that you can help out More Than a Conversation. First, wherever you're listening, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. That will definitely help, and that'll make sure that you get all the content. Also, if you have a way to rate, if your app allows you to give a 4-star, 5-star, whatever the rating is that's the top rating, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and drop a rating there. That's how the aggregators and the distributors rank podcasts, and the higher the ranking you give, the more ears will be able to hear these great conversations. Thanks again, and I'm hoping that today has been more than a conversation for you. Now let's get back to it.
But the Republicans' job, supposedly, was to hitch their wagons to more conservative values. Love of country, sovereign borders, traditions, and foundations of this nation, believe in the Constitution as it was originally intended. States' rights, federal government is small, taxes are small, expectation that the individual is free to make or not make anything. The government is not responsible to give you health care. All that, by the way, the church used to intervene in. That's why there's soup kitchens, and that's why they have a tax-exempt status for one reason, because they're actually giving back to society and helping ways government isn't supposed to or can't afford to. So it has a function in society that is beyond just teaching about God. So the Republicans' job, supposedly, was to check and balance, as is the Democrats. They think that Donald Trump is doing something unconstitutional. They should file a lawsuit. And if I think that they're doing something, there's no way you keep balance is saying, I don't think this is right. Let's see what happens. But they didn't. The Republicans said, we'll take care of you. Vote for us. We're on your side. And then, of course, they don't do anything. Well, let me tell you something. I believe there's a deeper level of hell for Judas than demons. Because Judas said, I'm on your side. Judas gave him a kiss and said, hey, Rabbi. So if say you're on my side and then betray me, I think that's worse than always saying I never liked you in the first place. At least that makes sense. So I'm very, concerned. It's why I removed myself from the Republican Party and just became independent, because my loyalty is to Christ, period.
Absolutely.
That's what drives me. So as much as the hierarchy of governments were created by God, and we are to honor that and respect it, if it tries to trump God's word, I have to excuse myself from that edict and say, no, I will never compromise my faith for the state. And that's where Christians are so dangerous to the left, because the left is a religion. You need to understand why they're so, what we think is crazy. It's their religion is being harmed, and people, there's nothing more personal to you. There's nothing more personal than your faith. So if your faith is in the state, if your faith is in progressive policies as moral commandments, then yeah, you're going to go nuts if people try to destroy it. Because it's like, to them, you are walking into the sacred places and polluting the holy vessels. That's what you're doing to them. So that's why they go nuts. Just like we'd feel if people came in and do things to our churches or our places of worship, when you take it very personally. So that's kind of what has happened. And so I think that we need to realize as believers, as Christians, as we are to be the best citizens. We do have a First Amendment right. It should be taken very serious. It should be protected. So no, I never believed in hate speech in the first place. I think it's a false term. It's again, a manipulation of words. It's like somebody saying, hate crime. That was another term I never believed in. Oh yeah, he murdered that guy. That's a hate crime. How come? Well, he was a white guy and that guy was a black guy, so that's a hate crime. He said, no. It's a crime. Period. Murder should be bad enough. All crime, for the most part, is hate. I hate that you exist and I don't want you here. I hate that you have something I don't have. I hate that you have a bigger mansion than me. I hate that you disagree with me. Everything's a hate crime, if you want to put it like that. But to give it this extra status, that if you murder me, that's bad. But if you murder me because I'm gay, that's really bad, is saying that some people are more important than other people. And I don't believe that. Because
because a crime against them is more valuable. It's
well,
it's more.
That's why hate crime shouldn't exist as a term. It should be bad enough that you commit the crime, and it should be equal. But again, you go back to the Word of God, which is the revelation of reality. The thing that Christians have that nobody else has is the truth. It actually tells us why the world's the way it is and how we can try to heal it, right? And so our faith teaches us something that we got from the Jews. There's one God, monotheism. If there's only one God and he created everybody, then we all come from him, which means literally we are all related. We're all made in his image. Thus, no one's better, no one's worse. That's why we hate slavery. That's why we hate abuse. That's why we hate sex trafficking. That's why we hate treating people differently, because we're all made in his. Do you understand that Jesus said there in heaven there's no marriage or given in marriage, right? What in the heck does that mean? Because we all want to die and think that we're going to be in our little mansion, our wife is going to join us, we're going to hang out with our grandkids, like it's just like here on earth. That's not what he said. He said there isn't even marriage. Well, if there's no marriage, then there's no children. In other words, I have a daughter, I have a son, and I have a wife, and I have parents. Guess what? In heaven, my wife becomes my sister. My son becomes my brother. My parents become my brothers and sisters. The amazing holy love that we all experience as the community of Christ is so exponentially greater than anything we can even begin to fathom on this earth. We got shadows of it by marriage and family. It's shadows. We think what could be more sacred? What could be more personal? I love everybody, but not like my own kids. That's exclusivity. And God said, well, yeah, I know it feels good, right? And I want you to embrace that depth of love and sacrifice. Wait till you get to heaven when everybody fits that mold. You have no idea. Martin Millard's a friend. Martin Millard's a friend of mine from Mercy Me. He wrote a song, I Can Only Imagine. Beautiful song. Beautiful song. It's not true. The Bible says, "Eye hath not seen, nor ear has heard, nor has entered in the hearts of man the things that God has provided for those who love him." We can't imagine what's coming. And that's why it's worth our physical body. Our physical body is important. It's sacred. It's holy. We are dualists. We are body and spirit. So we shouldn't disregard the body or think that it doesn't have value. But this is the blink of our existence until we move into eternity. So this isn't what we're supposed to hang on to. If you really believe that eternity is with God Almighty, then death is simply an open door to what you were going to become all along. This life on this earth is just the bridge to forever. So when you can understand that and realize you are in fact a sacrifice as a Christian, once you accept Christ, you're a sacrifice now for whatever God needs to help others join us. And you take it seriously. It's hard. We're humans. We still want to kind of protect ourselves and we get nervous because we're fallen, right? But if you begin to allow God to say, make me that guy that actually loves you with all my heart, my mind, my soul, my strength, and loves my neighbors, myself, and loves my enemy, and prays for those that spitefully use me. If you can actually become that, not do it in a formula of ritual, but you actually become that guy, you'll know exactly what to say, what not to say, what your life is for, and you'll love your life, but you won't treasure it like you will eternity. And that means you'll be available for whatever is necessary for others to join you because you don't deserve it. God gave you grace. Your turn to be Jesus for that guy who hates you.
I want to go back to the speech thing. And I think it's very important. I actually thought that I would have more of a conversation with you just about the nature of good versus evil that we're seeing in the world and actually Charlie Kirk's actual killing and then the positives that have come out of his testimony after that and people responding to the faith. And there's so many things that we can unpack. But Charlie actually said something, and it's been going around. He says hate speech. This was a tweet of his. I guess at some point I saw someone shared it, a pastor friend then shared it. Hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech. There's gross speech. There's evil speech. And all of it is protected by the First Amendment. Keep America free. We juxtapose that to what's happening. So Pam Bondi and just looking, so what she said was, she said, absolutely, we, the DOJ, will absolutely target you over hate speech. Now, today, she has started trying to pull back and say, well, we're not saying we're going to prosecute, but her actual quote was that the administration would, quote, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. Today, she has tried to add on a caveat of, well, if that speech becomes violence. Well, in my perspective, when the speech becomes violence, the violence is the crime. That's the crime, the assault, the battery, the robbery, the burning, the looting, the rioting, but not the speech. And I honestly believe that we have to even be careful with our incitement, so-called incitement. I think there are certain things you don't want to say, and certainly we already have those legal lines, but when we start calling things incitement, what happens when I stand in the pulpit and I declare that abortion is a terrible evil, and I describe, what happens, and then someone says, well, he incited me to go out and do violence against this abortionist. And so, I think speech is so important. I think for believers, it's very important for us to understand the difference between we do have free speech, but we also have obligation, because as citizens of this country, we have free speech, but as citizens of the kingdom, we have an obligation to speak words that are seasoned with the Spirit. So again, that's something I just wanted to circle back to that because, having brought that into the conversation, something you weren't familiar with, it does look like as of this morning, she's tried to pull back a little bit, but her exact quote, hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. And we would agree with that when we're actually threatening someone. But again, that is worrisome to me. And I think you're kind of tapping into it a little bit as well. It is very worrisome to me, and I'm a very politically active. And when I say that, I believe that God has called pastors to be voices to people in government, not voices for people in government. And I think that's one of the problems we're seeing right now is that some have become voices for various politicians, administrations, and that sort of thing. But we are to be a prophetic voice to them. We're to tell them this is what God says, not go out and try to find a way to put God's spin on what the politicians said. But it's very concerning to me when I see, and you're a guy, you were very tapped into what it meant to be an American in many ways, in the things that you would say. Those were the things that stood out to me. You defended Christian principles, but I would say that those things are a little more tied together sometimes than folks want to say. At least it's hard to have American freedoms without Christian worldview that you're operating in those freedoms. But it feels like politically we're at a point where believers they've picked a team and they're going to go along with whatever their team says, even if that means it's not Christian or not American.
No, that's a big problem. And again, I believe, I got my own podcast, Brad Son Has Issues. And, when I started it, it was during Corona. I didn't want to start a podcast. I didn't have some aspirations to. There's a million out there doing it better than me. It's like, what do I have to offer? But I was bored. I had nothing to do. I couldn't work. And so I started just going on Facebook Live and just talking because I felt like I have to say something. And I found people interested in what I had to say. So that's when, again, it began to grow into, I guess I have a voice that God's using in this field, this genre, as well. But, I was trying to understand, well, what does it mean? What am I going for? What is it that you called me to do? And the only reference point I had that I felt was undeniable was in my live events, because that's where I've made all of my livelihood, my whole life for the most part. I mean, I've done movies and books and other things that can bring in an income, but for the most part, it's just me performing as a comic in front of mainly churches now for so many years. A lot of conservative groups now bring me in, but or fundraising for pro-life groups, things along that line, but mainly churches, right? And so all I could do is assess fruit, right? My value it doesn't matter what I say. It matters, what do I do? How do I live? What is my behavior? That proves who you are, not what you say, because a lie is a lie, right? The words are important, but they should have a return of investment. If somebody says something and you don't see it in their life, then something isn't jiving, right? You reap what you sow. So I should see a reaping of when I say I'm a Christ follower, I'm trying to love my enemy. All these things should be seen in the way you behave. And yeah, your words can help describe that. But I think that what I've discovered and what was very important is that even though, a government is, I guess, for lack of a better term, somewhat secular, and that it's just trying to give sort of specific laws and functions as to what it's for. And really, a government isn't that complicated. It's supposed to protect the innocence of its civilians and provide, for it welfare and the ability to interact and so forth. But it's not really supposed to get involved in every part of your life, frankly. At least if it's a free government, it's not a monarchy or totalitarian government. Then you still have to always ask the second most powerful three-letter word in human history. Why? When one speaks about what it means to be an American, you kind of have to ask, well, why? Why do we find life to be sacred? Because we just feel, what will an atheist say? Well, it's about human flourishing. It's kind of like tit for tat. I don't want you to kill me, so I'll tell you what. I won't kill you, you won't kill me, and we'll both flourish together. Isn't that logical? It's like it is, but it doesn't work because people have continued to kill people and don't ever stop. So without a moral absolute, a judge, an arbiter that tells you, here's why you don't do it, you're made in my image, I and I alone have the right to take you home, and that if you do, you will be punished here or in the hereafter. Without that, there's nothing to keep me from doing whatever I choose. Now, you could say, like Freud did, that that's wish fulfillment, or it's some sort of pretense. Like, let's pretend God exists, so it gives us some sense of moral, commitment we need to make. I guess you could say that you use it. It's more instrumentally valuable, but nevertheless, it still shows that it's the only way it works. You got to have something higher than you making the rules. Otherwise, you can change it. Look what atheists. Show me any country in history whose foundation was atheism that brought human flourishing, human rights, goodness, love, hope. People flocked to their shores, couldn't wait to get in. Show me one that has a foundation that is atheist, and that, of course, that's Marxism and so forth. You got Cuba, you got Pol Pot, you got Mao Zedong, you've got Khrushchev, you got Stalin, you've got China. It always destroys human rights. It always subjugates. It always starves and kills and rapes and mutilates. Always. Because the people that are in charge are God. And there's nothing to keep them from sacrificing you to the state. It's all a religious idea. Everything is religious. It's just, is it the truth or is it the lie? Jesus said, I am the truth. All truth derives from me. Satan is the father of lies. So when I talk about America, I reference, the Pilgrims. They came here to get away from religious persecution. They got here and said, if you want to join us, you got to, honor Christ. The constitutions of the original states, many of them said, you got to believe in Jesus. I mean, they knew we can't do this constitutional republic without absolute moral standards, because we are the government, which means we don't want to guy with a bayonet at every corner demanding we behave a certain way. And for us to be able to do that, we have to be self-disciplined. And the only way you can do that is to be under the authority of something holy and perfect. Well, how can you do that unless it's God? And so which God is it? How about the Judeo-Christian God that made the rules for what is ethical and moral and so forth? And from that, we derive more specific laws like free speech. God gives us free speech. God lets you go to hell. That's how free God lets you live. I'm not going to make you come to heaven. So there's a lot at stake for being free. There's a lot at stake because it can be abused. I said this on my podcast. People are saying, well, Charlie Kirk was saying that, hey, unfortunately people will die because of the Second Amendment. But, it's worth it to have the ability to have the citizenry armed. And if you read, of course, what he's talking about, he was in no way saying it didn't matter.
Right.
What he was saying, in essence, was to be free. There's a cost, unfortunately, because some people will abuse that freedom and use it for evil. But every totalitarian government that has ever existed started by disarming its citizens.
Yeah.
So we, as Americans, and who came from a monarchy that was trying to tell them how they could behave, said, we're not going to have that. We want everybody armed so that if the government ever goes sideways, you can defend yourself. Well, clearly, that means the guns are available to some lunatic. Clearly, it means if somebody decides to murder you, there's nothing you got to choose. You live in a slave state where the government and the government only has power to kill you, and you have no way to defend yourself. Or you say, okay, we want that, but we realize because humans are sinful, back to the Bible, back to the Judeo-Christian ethic that teaches us what is true, it will cost us something. So I even said on my own shows, listen, everything that Charlie believed, I believe. I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus Christ is the way to heaven. I believe in conservative values and so forth, and holding a meritocracy, and everybody's equal, and everybody's expected to do things exactly with the same potential, but not always the same result. I believe in all the same things, which means there are people in this nation we now see, because we saw them dance on video, that would celebrate my death because of my beliefs. And I said and by the way, if you celebrate death, or you hear someone says they're going to kill somebody and you don't participate, but you go, yeah, whatever, you're complicit. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm going to go kill the gas station owner over there, and you go, oh, really? Okay. And you don't say anything, you can get charged. So that's how bad it is. You talk about where we're at, that there are people that will dance on someone's grave and say you deserve it. Well, that's me then. They're saying that about me because I believe the same things he does. But I also said, if somebody kills me, and I told my family this a few years ago, I said, I'm going to stand for Christ and for these belief systems. I'm going to do it. 5, 6, 7 years ago, I said this to them. It cost me my life, guys. I don't want to die. Not now. Not like a martyr. I want to live old, have my grandkids. I want all that like everybody else does. But I want you to know that if it kills me for what I stand for, your dad died for something that he believed was true and was more important than life. I'd rather you have a martyr who's told you there's something more important. This Jesus thing is real, and I'm going to give my life for it if that's what's asked, as opposed to some old guy in his bed as all my family stand around me as I'm fading away. And they say, tell us again, Grandpa, what America was like when it was free. I'm not going to do that. So you either get in or you get out. You either decide you're going to become a disciple. And by the way, he's weeding out the wheat and the chaff. God is weeding out the weak churches that have been Christ followers in name only. My call to the church is to be a prophetic voice by calling believers to become disciples. That's what I believe God's mission for me is. It's not an evangelist, even though people can get saved and have been saved at things I've talked about. But it's to the people who think they're good and saying you haven't even started. That's my calling. That's what churches are bringing me in now more than ever. And they've seen my show for 25 years. They're finally catching up to what I've been saying for a long time. You better honor free speech. You better care about the big things. You better be creating warriors that will be willing not to kill for Christ, but to die for him. That's the kind of Christian warrior we are.
So let me ask you, I'm curious, because this is something that I've been struggling with, and I'd like, or I say struggling with, I've been thinking about, which path are we going to be on? Our nation, according to our founding fathers, it only works. These freedoms only work for a moral and religious people. That's the only way it works. And I get there's going to be a cost, and not everyone's always going to be a Christian, and some believer one day may go do the wrong thing with a gun or whatever. Like, we get that. But the cost appears to be rising. And I think the cost is rising, if you will, because we do not have immoral and religious people. You can't give a gun to people who don't value life. You can't give free speech to people who don't value truth. You can't give the right to be, secure in your person and papers to people who are hiding terrible things. And that I'm not saying that we should take these things away, but that's what's happening. We're discovering, hey, you give people free speech or freedom of artistic expression. Well, that person wants to say terrible things in public, or wants to make pornography and display it for children to see, or whatever the thing might be. So if we must be a moral and religious people to operate within these freedoms, and we're getting further from that, I don't see how there's any way that we're going to avoid some of these freedoms being taken by government, some of these freedoms being pulled back, some of these freedoms becoming more limited. And I think we see it even in these conversations where people on both sides are talking about things like hate speech, or eventually, you're going to hear, like right now, one of the common sense gun laws. We need common sense gun laws. Well, here's a common sense gun law. Don't kill people. Like, that's pretty common sense, right? And so do we have any hope, and should our hope be in turning back to Christian values? And I get, as Christians, we always want everyone to, but on a national view, where we need to be saying, hey, we need to be teaching children in schools. We need to be doing these things like the Ten Commandments. We need to be re-Christianizing our nation. Even those people who are not Christians need to where do we go with that? And I guess I'm trying to wrestle it all out. So it's a bit of a convoluted question, and I hate to throw something like that at you, but I know the way you think about these things. And I've been struggling in my mind to really put down, okay, do we have to acquiesce and accept, and I don't want to, that we're just going to have to give some of these things up because that's where we're going? Or should we be about, man, there's so many loaded words. As soon as I start talking like this, somebody's going to call me a Christian nationalist. But should we be about Christianizing, again, our populace?
Yes, is the answer. And the reason it's the answer is because it's true. Do you believe Jesus is God? Do you believe he's Messiah? Do you believe that he represented the living God that created everything? If you do, then clearly his edicts are the ones we have to follow as humans, because it's his game. He invented it, and he expects us to be part of it, and then gave us the freedom to go sideways from get-go, from day one. But when I say that, you need to understand something that most Christians aren't really thinking through, and it's what Charlie probably tried to say, and many of those who believe in the West and the Christianity that created. To say, oh, we got to Christianize it, sounds like a theocracy. Like you're going to say, you must be a Christian or you will be jailed or shot or whatever. And the beautiful thing about the Bible is it's more than a book. It's the revelation of reality. So not only does it give us moral absolutes and expectations, but it also self-corrects. So if somebody uses the Bible and says, hey, it says it's okay to have a slave. Look, he tells me how to treat my slaves good. So see, it's all about having slaves. Well, guess who stopped slavery?
Christians. Yeah.
Christians. William Wilberforce. Well, why? Why didn't you read the Bible and say, no, be good to your slaves? No. The bigger question, and it was written about in the Ten Commandments, you cannot steal. Well, guess what? If you take my freedoms away from me, you've stolen my freedom. It was already spoken of. You don't get to steal my autonomy and my agency. You don't get to steal it.
Because the government didn't give that to me. Those are God-given things that the government recognizes.
You don't get to covet your neighbor's goods. What is progressivism based on? Covetousness. You have more than me. I want it. I'm taking it. I'm stealing it. And I've decided you aren't worthy of it. Meanwhile, God said, if I give you 5, I want 5 more. If I give you 3, I want 3 more. And if I give you only 1, you don't get to complain, nor do you get to go to the guy with 10 and say, give me 1. You double what you have. So the Christian ethic is already inculcated into the West. That's what people forget. Well, maybe we need to return to Christian values. The fact that we're trying to be moral are Christian values. The fact that we believe that you're supposed to behave in a certain way are already Christian values. You think I'm kidding? Go to communist China and ask them if it's illegal for them to kill their citizenry because they're not obeying the state. That's murder. No, it isn't, because we make the rules. Well, wait a minute. In Christianity and in the West, which is built on Christian values, and by the way, there's historian Tom Holland who wrote a famous book a number of years back called Dominion. He's an atheist. And he started looking into what created the West. And it is irrefutable that it was Christianity. Christianity gave us the scientific method, for example. It's not the first idea that ever tried to understand the nature, the universe, or whatever. I'm not saying other cultures didn't have curiosity, but the method of science, inductive and deductive reasoning, of experimentation, assuming that the world is made in a particular pattern that is going to be consistent so that we can have access to results that are God's natural order so we can understand his handiwork. That's all Christian stuff. Universities, keeping ideas alive, free speech, people say, yeah, we don't need God, let's just have free speech. What gives you the right or the justification to tell me free speech matters? Sounds good, but why should I listen to you? I'm decided I'm going to kill you, rape your wife, because I'm only here to propagate. That's it, to survive. That's what evolution teaches. I'm here to survive. I'm going to rape every woman I can, kill any man gets in my way, because that's what I'm made for. And you'd say, well, that's wrong. Says who? I win. I got the guns. I win. Only with the Christian ethic are you compelled to self-censor. So when you talk about bringing in Christian values, it's not as a cudgel to beat you over the head with the Bible or to demand you become a Christian. That's ridiculous. God doesn't even make you become a Christian. Why would a human do it? But what you can do is take Christian principle as the fabric of your culture that everybody has to honor. You don't have to become a Christ follower, but we're using these values as the implementation of how we are going to be a community that is not in discord. So you don't have to be a Christian, but you have to honor these ideas. You don't get to steal, you don't get to kill, you don't get to covet. There is a holy God bigger than us. I don't believe in God. I know you don't. And the reason I give you permission to not believe in God and not get shot is because God is real and said, I want you to have that permission. So yeah, you need the Christian God to give you access to the very freedom to deny he exists. That's why my latest podcast, the last 2, have been with an atheist. Because I don't believe you can be an atheist and live a coherent life without borrowing from a theistic point of view. Because life is meaningless if atheism is true, and yet you don't live that way. If you don't live that way, then something is missing in your philosophy. So any belief system that cannot withstand intellectual scrutiny should not deserve your obedience. So when you talk about bringing even the 10 Commandments, for example, and people got all weird about you're trying to create a religious perspective that we ought to have, because the 10 Commandments isn't Muslim, even though I'm sure they have similar edicts, or it's not, maybe pagan or whatever. But here's the thing: the 10 Commandments is the the grounding for
Western civilization,
Western morality. So you can look at it strictly as a philosophy that created the country you live in. So you don't have to turn it as a means by which you must become, that you have to become the believer in Christ as Messiah. No, but you do have to understand why you have the freedom to not believe in him and not get shot, because you don't get that option in China or in Iran or any other Sharia law or whatever. You don't get the option. So that's why it's something that can be consistent with the Constitution and freedom, not demanding or inculcating into culture a religious belief that. And keep in mind, this is the other thing that get people miss. The first line says this: Congress, stop. So before we go any further, apparently whatever he's about to say has to do with Congress. Okay, Congress, got it. Shall make no law. Ooh, this is about a law that Congress made. Okay, keep going. Respecting the establishment of a religion. Okay, simple reading. Congress can never make it a law that you have to be a Christian. Got it. Or forbidding the free exercise thereof. Ooh, Congress cannot make a law forbidding the free exercise of religion. How many congressional laws do you remember that were proclaimed you have to have a nativity scene in a public park? Oh, none. Okay, how many congressional laws demand that you have a Christmas pageant in a public school and sing a hymn to Jesus? Oh, none. Okay, how many congressional laws stated that you have to be a Christian to be free in this nation? And the answer is never. The only laws we have ever seen inculcated into our culture is the opposite. You're not allowed to have that religious figure on that public sphere because it's established. Congress had nothing to do with that. That was the community standard that is the freedom of every free city, state in this nation to choose what they want. If you want atheist town, you can have it. If you want Jesus town, you can have it. And yeah, you can use public funds to support it. You can't do it by congressional law. That you can't do. But if I want it, that's my business. That's what it means to be free. And that's what people have missed. They have, once again, manipulated words to create a false narrative. And that's why Christians are so uninformed to understand their rights and even their own belief system. They don't know how to defend their faith. They don't know what it means. That's why I'm called, I believe, to encourage discipleship, learning, growing, study to show yourself approved unto a God, a workman needs not be ashamed, rightly by your word of truth. Listen, I should be in every church in America. I do comedy that overcomes and pierces your presuppositional worldview, which is either anti-Christian or legalistic. I get around that because the comedy makes you laugh. You bring your defenses down. And then I bring a truth that God can finally get into your heart so you can listen to it. You might still disobey it, but at least you had access to reality. The rest of the folks hopefully will become encouraged to go deeper because that's my call in my life. I have had churches over the years say, we love you, but we're not bringing you in. You're too political. I said, well, okay. What do you mean by political? If you think I'm going to come in and say vote Republican, I promise you, I ain't. If you think I'm going to do a Trump rally, I promise I'm not interested. But if you think I'm not going to talk about the culture, you're wrong. I'm a Christ follower. You know what that means? I'm forbidden to hate people, but I'm commanded to hate ideas that are against God. That's my job.
Absolutely.
That's my purpose.
Absolutely.
If you're a Christian, that's yours. So that's where we're at. And so my whole idea of Laugh While It's Legal is becoming more. I'm creating tours actually nationally for churches. This is going to be my marching orders. I'm doing something with Chad Prather in December. I don't know if you know him, but he's a conservative commentator, kind of a Christian guy, great guy. And I feel like it's time for me to go across the country and bring this reimagining America to the forefront, reawakening the church. Let's make a tour. How many is interested? We talked about this. I could get, I don't know how many there are in this country, but I could get 30 or 40 or 50 to say, man, we'd love that. And I go into North Carolina and we'll do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then I go over into Oregon and then I go over into New England. Oh, I'd love to go into New England and restart a fire there. So that's the challenge. The enemy doesn't want me to be used as very often because he knows what's at stake. If you're dangerous, you will be fought against. You will be attacked. If your Christianity never comes with any kind of difficulties or challenges, apparently it's because you are impotent and irrelevant, and Satan doesn't care what you're up to because you're not hurting him.
Absolutely.
This is what we're at stake, and this is what I want to bring all believers to, that place where every one of us walk out and Satan's like, holy smoke, they're out again. Now,
absolutely. Well, hey, Brad, we're gonna wrap it up here, man. Thank you so much for the time that you spent today. Lots of other things we could talk about. Maybe we'll have to do this again in the future. I'm looking forward to hearing feedback from this. By the way, I've got my own copy of the Constitution here, and you good quoting skills there. No, but honestly, just the actual language. If Americans would know this, and if Christians would know the Bible, wow, what a difference that would make. But let me ask you this. But first of all, everybody that's out there, if you're a pastor, a ministry leader, you need to connect with Brad Stine. He came out here to our church, did a great job. We actually were doing a pro-life event, and did a great job there. Absolutely pulled no punches, and the people absolutely loved it. Lots of great feedback. But if you're in a church, hey, drop a line to your ministry leader. Just say, hey, have you heard about this Brad Stine guy? Check him out. Go watch his stuff. I promise you'll laugh. It is quality. Let me just say this. Sometimes when you go watch a quote unquote Christian movie, you're like, or if you hear a Christian comic, it's like, Brad Stine is a great artist who is also a Christian. He does incredible things. The foundational preaching and teaching. And I love the fact that you use the term prophetic voice, because that's absolutely happening. But the art, you're going to hear truth and you're going to laugh while you hear it. You're going to enjoy it. Brad, for anybody who wants to follow you, where can they find you online? Where can they follow you?
Well, the easiest is just to go to bradstine.com, because that has access to my podcast, Brad Stine Has Issues, which is where I'm sitting in this studio. It also has info at bradstine.com. That's how you reach out to me. I personally take these notes. I don't have agents and managers. I'm just a Christ follower on the same journey you are. No better than you, no more important than you. But I do come alongside churches and assist the pastor by reigniting a fuse into their parishioners. So then he can take that and navigate his people into going to a deeper walk with Christ, which is why you exist as a church. So we're all just in the body doing our part. And so just go to bradstine.com, join up to Brad Stine Has Issues. And if you believe what I am talking about, bring me into your church, pray for me, and let's fight together until God says, I'm done. You're finished. Coming home.
Brad, thank you so much for joining me today. Stay in the fight for free speech. I think that is one of the most valuable things you're doing. Continue calling Christians out. Thank you so much. It's been great to have you with us today.
My pleasure. God bless you.
And to everyone else, I hope that today has been more than a conversation for you.
Thanks again for being part of More Than a Conversation today. If you'd like more content like this, check out my blog at www.pastorconley.com. That's PastorConley.com. Again, that's PastorConley.com. I'd also love to see you join us in worship at Garden Sanctuary. If you're ever in Rock Hill, South Carolina, or the greater Charlotte area, we'd love to have you stop by and worship with us. Check us out at www.gardensanctuary.org. That's gardensanctuary.org. Until next time, I hope this has been more than a conversation.